Hello guys, welcome back. So in today's video we are going to learn about the frequency counter pattern. Okay, so what is frequency counter, like why we use it, okay, and what are the benefits of it? Let's quickly discuss. And before that, make sure you are ready with your code editor or wherever you are coding, right? Because today we are going to solve a question related to this frequency counter as well. Okay, so frequency counter, this basically uses the objects or sets to collect values, okay, or the frequencies of the values. So let's say you have some data set. Let's say you have an object, okay. You want to collect the information of it. Let's say you want to collect like how many data, how many keys it have, and in those keys how many values are getting stored, how many times it is getting repeated. Okay, so let's take an example of array. Okay, so let's say you have an array. In simple words, you want to count like every value which is stored in the array, how many times it is repeated. Okay, so that you can store in an object. Let's say you have in an array you have 1 2 3 3 3 4. Okay, so how you will frame that in an object? Like in object you will have a key 1, it is repeated 1 times, 2 it is repeated 1 times, 3 it is repeated 3 times, 4 it is repeated 1 times. So this way you can frame an object, or you can frame a data structure which will basically take care of the number of frequencies or the values, okay, whichever you have passed in a data set. Okay, so now what is the benefit of using the frequency counter? So let's say you are working with some data sets where you need to like search, or basically you need to compare two data sets. Okay, like whether the values of one data set is available in the another data set or not. Like in, let's take an example of two arrays. Okay, so let's say you have array 1, array 2. Okay, so you want to check like whether all the values of array 1 are available in array 2 or not. In with normal approach, how you will do it? You will simply run a nested for loop, right? You will run a for loop, and inside of that again you will run a for loop. Okay, and that will simply give you the complexity of O of n square. Okay, but if you use the frequency counter pattern, if you adapt frequency counter pattern, it can reduce the complexity from O of n square to O of n. Okay, so that is why I've mentioned like the benefit. This can often avoid the need of using the nested for loops or O of n operations. So whichever operation is taking O of n time or O of n complexity, we can avoid that by using frequency counter patterns. Okay, maybe it sound confusing for you guys for now. Let's understand this with an example. Okay, then it will be crystal clear. So don't worry about that. Okay, so right now I have a question. Okay, so write a function called similar squared. Okay, which accepts two arrays. It should return true if every value in the first array has its corresponding value squared in the second array. Okay, the frequency of the values must be the same. So what I mean by that here, so all you need to do is you need to create a function which accepts two arrays like this one and this one, array 1, array 2 you can consider. Okay, and then you have to check like every value in the first array should be there squared in the second array. So let's say we have 1, the square of 1 will be 1. Okay, the square of 2 will be 4. Okay, the square of 3 will be 9. So every value in the first array should be squared and should be available in the second array. Then only it should return true, and the length of both the arrays should be same. Okay, then only it should return true. If the length mismatches, then also you have to return false. If the squared value is not there, let's say here we have 1 2 1, so in the other array we should have 1 4 1, because square of 1 will be 1, square of 2 will be 4, and then square of 1 will be again 4, 1. Okay, so here we have right now is 4 4 1, which is incorrect, right? So it should return false like this. Okay, and it is irrespective of the index. It is not like you have to pass the same value in the same index. If you are passing 1 in the first index here, then here you have to pass the square value of 1 in the first index as well. It can be shuffled. It is irrespective of the index. So as you can see by this example clearly, here we have 1 2 3. So if you go in order, it should contain like 1, 4 and 9, right? But right now it is 419. So you have to find out the number and its corresponding squared value. Okay, so with the naive approach, how we can write, we can simply use the like any built-in array methods, or we normally use the nested for loops, right? So naive approach, basically I mean by like not a good approach, we used to say. Okay, that is what in short form we say naive approach, right? So let's see this question with a naive approach example first. Naive approach solution. So right now here I have a naive solution. So this one, okay, similar squared. So let's understand what is happening here right now first. Okay, so here we are accepting two arrays, array 1, array 2. Okay, so if first we are checking if the length of array 1 is not equals to length of array 2, then we are straight away returning false. Okay, because this is what we want, right? The length of both the arrays should be same. Okay, so first thing is clear. And then if the length are same, then obviously it will not go inside this if loop. It will run a for loop, right? It will go into this for loop, and in this for loop what we are doing, we are running we are iterating through array 1. Okay, now since we are iterating through array 1, what will happen, we are checking in array 2 the index of array 1 squared. Okay, so this double asterisk will give you the squared value. Okay, let me show you quickly. So let's say you want to get a square of 2. Okay, so if you use double asterisk you will get 4. I think you can see it, right? Let me zoom it. Okay, you will get 4. If you want to get square of 3, then simply double asterisk 2, you will get 9. Okay, so this double asterisk is used for getting the squared value. Now this index of will also iterate through the array, right? Because it is going to find the index of the element which you are passing here in the array 2. So that means you are running one for loop here, and then you are using index of, which again will iterate through the complete array to find the index of the element, basically whichever you are passing here. Okay, so that is why we had two nested loops. Okay, or we have two iterations, we can say. Okay, so now what we are doing, we are looping through array 1, and then we are finding that squared element in array 2. Okay, which we are storing in correct index. Okay, so if we found the index in the array 2, then it will return the index of that element, otherwise it will return like -1. Basic functionality of array index of, right? Let me show you quickly. So let's say you have an array um, which have high true. Okay, so if I check the index of index of true, then I'm getting 0 because it is stored in the 0th position. Okay, so let's store in the second position. Okay, so now it will return like 1. Okay, the index of this is 1. Now if I try to access the index of 2, which is not there in the array, then it will simply return me -1, right? So this is what is happening here. If the element is not present in the array, then this index of will return -1. Okay, and then in that case also we will simply return false. Okay, that means the element is not available in the second array. The first uh, the array 1's element is not available in the second element array. Okay, so we are returning false here. Okay, and then after returning false, like in case if the element is there, so what we will do, we will simply remove it from the array 2. Okay, so how it will go, let's take an example here. Let's take this one. Okay, so here what will happen, let's say you have these two arrays. Okay, this is array 1 and this is array 2. Okay, array 1. Okay, and this is array 2. So you are checking for this number squared value, it is there. You are, then we are simply removing it from the second array. This is what this line is doing. Okay, and then you are checking this element, whether the squared value of this element is there in this array 2 or not. It is there, we are removing it from the second array. Okay, and then we are checking for the uh, third element. Okay, whether the squared value of this element is available in the second array. It is there. Okay, then we are simply returning true. That means all the elements have the squared value, have their squared value available in the second array. Okay, so this is how it is working. Okay, so let's see this with an example. Similar is squared, right? So I already have the optimized solution here. Let me quickly change its name for time being. Okay, because I don't want it to run. Okay, so I'll just add some extra space. Okay, so I'll clear this and I will run this one. Okay, so here I'll take an example of this one. So this one should return true, right? But let's just take this one. Why we are writing this? Okay, so as you can see, this one is returning us true. Okay, so let's take this one. What should happen? Since we have the length mismatch, this one have 3, this one have 2, it will obviously give us false only, right? Okay, so now let's check with this one. So in this one, what do you think should happen? It should return false, right? Let's see. It is returning false because here we have 1 to 1. So this method will expect this array to have squared value of 1 to 1. Okay, but it is having squared value of 1 to 2, 4, 4, 1. Okay, so 4 square of 2, remember? Yeah. So let's quickly see like how this array is getting like how this array is getting changed, how we are removing the elements. Okay, let's understand this now. So array 2 I'll simply pass and then let's see what happens. Okay, so in case of first one, this one. Okay, so console log, I'm logging array 2, so it is not logging anything. Do I need to store it or refresh it, or let's see. Okay, okay, yeah. So now as you can see, it found the first element which was there in the second array. Okay, in the first iteration, then it removed it for the second iteration. Okay, now we are in second iteration. Here we are checking the squared value of 2. It found in the second array, like we have a squared value of 2 in the second array. It found it, it removed it. Then we came into the third iteration. Okay, here we are checking the squared value of 3. Okay, so the squared value of 3 is available in the second array. It found it, it removed it, and it returned true. Okay, so this is how this one is working. But since we are using nested loops, or since it is doing like nested iterations, because this index of will iterate through the array, right? So whether it depends upon you, like whether you write two nested for loops or you write it this way. End of the day, these two are going to iterate through the array, right? So that is why the time complexity of this one is O of n square. Okay, so that means let's say you have 1000 iterations, okay, in this one, this loop. Okay, and then you have 1000 iterations in this one, because obviously if the size of the array is 1000, then it is also going to iterate 1000 times, right? So what will happen now? This outer 1000 will be multiplied by the inner 1000, right? That will be, I think, somewhere around 1 million. Okay, if I'm not wrong. So this way the time complexity is O of n square. And let me quickly show you the time complexity here as well. This is just for sake of example. I don't like encourage you to use these AI tools to check the time complexity and space complexity at all, because they can help you in the day-to-day life obviously, but in interviews they are not going to help you a lot at all. Okay, so in interviews you only have to analyze the time complexity, space complexity by yourself. These AI tools are not going to save your life. There you will literally die if you are used to like these AI tools. Okay, so I'm not promoting any of these AI tools, but just for the sake of like proof, I wanted to show you. Okay, so I have pasted my function here and then I'm analyzing it. Now it is giving me the big O of n square, right? So as you can see the code, what is this? The code has nested loop structure where the outer loop iterates over each element in array 1 and the inner loop uses index of method which has a time complexity of O of n. Okay, and the in the worst case, therefore the overall time complexity is O of n square. Okay, so the time complexity of this thing is O of n because it is also going to iterate through the n number of times in the array, right? That is why I was saying like the time complexity or the complexity will be O of n square because this is looping first one, this is looping through the array, and then this thing is looping through the array. Okay, now let's see like how we can improve this solution with the help of frequency counter. Okay, let me quickly remove like switch the tab, right? So this is the knife solution. Okay, now let's see the refactored one or the optimized one. Okay, let me quickly stretch it a little bit. So let's first understand what is going on in this one. Okay, so here if you see here we have a like we can say optimized solution. Okay, what we are doing here, again we are accepting two arrays. Okay, and then in the first case we are checking if the length is not same, return it. We don't want that, just return false. Okay, then we are creating two objects, frequency counter 1, frequency count 2. Okay, and then what we are doing, we are iterating through the arrays. This time I have not used that let I equals to 0 and all those stuff, so this one was simple, so I've used this one. Okay, now here what I'm doing is like in frequency counter 1, first I'm iterating through the array 1, and then I'm storing basically every element of the array 1 as a key for the frequency count 1 object. Okay, and in its value what I'm doing, I'm storing the frequencies of like how many times that value got repeated in that array. Okay, let's say we have 3 repeated 2 times in array 1. Okay, so it will store 3 as a key, something like this, 3 as a key, and then how many times it is repeated, what is the frequency of that 3. Okay, so this way it will store it. Okay, I'll remove it for now. So the same thing we are doing in the array 2, we are iterating through the array 2, and the same way we are storing it into the frequency count 2. Here also we are checking if the value is available. Okay, then store the value or just store 0. Okay, otherwise just increment it to 1. So it's simply like if the value is not available, store 1. If the value is available, increment its value by 1. Okay, because here if you see like if it is already there, then it will contain some value, right? This object will contain some value against that key. Okay, so let's say 1 2, so we are just incrementing to it. If there is no value in this one, then we will pick 0 and then we'll simply increment it to 1. Okay, now here is the main thing, what makes it like way more faster than the one knife solution. Okay, so by here itself you can see like we have two for loops. We obviously have two for loops, but they are at the same level. Okay, and in the big O section I have told you if they are at the same level, then their complexity will be O of n only, right? So let's say big O of n this one, big O of n this one, we have two big O of n, right? So we can simplify it down to big O of n. Okay, so anyways they are going to take the same time only. Let's say this one have 1000 iterations. Okay, let's say the size of array is 1000, array 1 is 1000, array 2 is 1000, so this one will have 1000 iterations, then altogether it will become just 2000. Okay, but in this case if we have 1000 elements here, 1000 elements here, then here if you loop it, then outer array will take 1000 elements and then inner array will take 1000 elements. So 1000 multiplied by 1000, it will give you 1 million, right? So that's a huge difference here. Now since we are mapping the objects, now we are doing again a for loop. Okay, we are running a for loop again. Now in this for loop what we are doing, we are basically checking the key. Okay, we are iterating through the keys in an object. Okay, so if you don't know, like this way we can iterate through the object as well. Okay, so it will give you the key of an object. Okay, now we are checking if the key which we are storing in the frequency counter 1, if the squared of that key is available in frequency counter 2, okay, then only we will return true, otherwise we will return false. Okay, If the squared value of the key of frequency counter 1 is not available in frequency counter 2, then we are returning false. Okay, this is first thing. So the second thing is, like, if the frequency counter 2 have the key but its value is not matching with frequency counter 1 at that particular key, that means, let's say array 1 have 2 repeated 2 times, array 2 have 2 repeated 3 times. So in the first array 2 is repeated 2 times, that means the frequency of 2 is 2. Okay, and in the second array 2 is repeated 3 times, that means the frequency of 2 is 3. So there is a difference in the frequencies, right? In the array first 2 is twice, and the array 2 is thrice, so it should return false. Okay, the frequency should be same. If in the array 1 2 we have repeated 2 times, then in array 2 also we want 2 repeated only 2 times, not less than 2, not more than 2. Okay, so that is what this check is doing. Okay, so if we have the key squared available in the frequency counter 2 of frequency counter 1, and if the frequency of that key available in the frequency counter 2 is equals to frequency counter 1 at that position, at that key, then only we are returning true here. Okay, so let's first see what we are getting in the frequency counter 1 and frequency counter 2 framed. Okay, so I log these two objects. Okay, I'll just copy this, so now you will get a better idea. Frequency counter 1, or I'll just write a string. Okay, so this way frequency counter 2. Okay, now let's quickly run it and let's quickly see what happens. Okay, let me just clear it. Yeah, so I think this one we can use, we can 12419, this one looks fine, so this one we can use, right? So as you can see, it have framed two objects. In the array 1 we have 123, in array 2 we have 419. Okay, so everything is repeating only just once, so that is why in frequency counter 1 is repeating 1 times. So these are the frequencies and these are the values in the array. Okay, so 2 is repeated once, 3 is repeated once, fine. Okay, now in the second array we have 419, right? So what it is doing, it is simply storing these values as the keys, and here are the frequencies, like how many times these values are getting repeated. Okay, so let's see one more example. So let's repeat 1 twice. Okay, 2 thrice. Okay, so here also we have to repeat 1 twice. Okay, and 2 thrice, right? We have 2 2 2, 4 4 4, 1 1 1 1 1. Okay, so 1 should be repeated twice only, right? Okay, so now if you see, we have the frequencies recorded for both the objects. Okay, so here's the thing to understand a little bit. Let me zoom out a little bit so you guys can see both the objects together. Okay, so in frequency counter 1 object we have 1 repeated twice, 2 repeated thrice, 3 repeated only once. Okay, so these are the frequencies, these are the values which were in the array. Okay, and if you talk about second object, we have the values which are stored as the keys, and then we have the frequencies which are stored as the values. Okay, so now let's see what is going on in this one. Okay, so now if you loop through the frequency counter 1, if you loop through this object only. Okay, so what we are checking, we are checking if the squared of that key, let's say if the squared of this key, okay, this particular key is squared, so 2 square is available in frequency counter 2. The square of 2 is available in frequency counter 2. As you can see, this key is already there in frequency counter 2. Okay, so it will return true. Okay, it will basically move on to the next condition to check the frequency. Okay, so now the key is there, fine. Okay, let's check the frequency, whether the frequency is same or not. Okay, so now the frequency counter 2 have the squared of the key which we have in the frequency counter 1. Okay, now what about the frequency, what about the value? Are the values matching of both the objects on that particular key? If the values are matching, okay, then only it will return true, otherwise it will return false. Okay, and the same thing it will check for all the values which are there in the array. Okay, so I hope you guys are understood now, like how this frequency counter works. Let's just write another example which returns false. Okay, so this time what I will do, I will just, in the second array I'll just iterate 4, I'll just repeat 4 twice. Okay, and in the first array 2 is repeated thrice. Now it is returning as false. Okay, so since the length itself is like since the length is not similar, so it is returning false here itself, it is not going into these console logs. So for that we have to add another number. So um let's add 12 here. Okay, because we don't have any value whose square is 12 here, right? So we are adding 12. So obviously the length is same now. If you see 1 2 3 4 5 6, this one have 6 elements. 1 2 3 4 5 6, this one have 6 elements. So the length is same, so it will not fail at this step. It will go, it will map the objects and it will give us the log. Okay, now let's hit it. Let me just stretch it a little bit, so you guys can see clearly. Okay, so here, like this one have 6 elements and this one have 6 elements, right? So now the frequency, how it is mapped: 1 is repeated twice, 2 is repeated thrice, 3 is repeated once. This is the frequency of first array. Okay, now in the second array, like 1 is repeated twice, 4 is repeated twice. If you see, there is an inconsistency here. 2 is repeated thrice, 4 is repeated twice. Okay, 9 is repeated once, 3 is repeated once. That is fine. Here 12 is repeated once, but here we don't even have any 12. Okay, so it is returning as false because it is failing in this step as well, this its step itself. So it checked the square of 2 is available as a key in the frequency counter 2 object. It is there, but is the value matching with this one? So basically this condition. Okay, so this condition got satisfied where the square of the key in frequency counter 1 is available in frequency counter 2, but the value stored in this key is equals to this key. It is obviously not, because here we have stored 3 and where here we have stored 4. Okay, so the values are not similar, so that is why it is simply returning as false. Sorry, this one, it is simply returning as false. Okay, so yeah, this is frequency counter in a nutshell. Sorry, let me quickly stretch it a little bit so you guys can see clearly. Okay, so this is frequency counter in a nutshell. So now what I will do, I want you guys to like solve one question. I'll drop in the description of this video. I'll drop this code as well along with these definitions. Okay, but I will drop another question in the description and I want you guys to solve that question. Okay, and drop in the comments like whether you have solved that question or not. Okay, because in the next video like we will see how we can solve the question. Okay, so yeah, this is it for this lecture, guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed. This is the very first, I think, coding video for you guys, so I hope you guys might have enjoyed it. So this is it for today's lecture. See you in the next one.